And I still remembered what that feeling was when we were in Top of the Pops. Because it was just, I was so sort of like so humbled, you know, like in his presence, thinking, oh my gosh, and he's young, but look what he's achieved, and he's unique. And so ended up having a conversation, and then he explained, and I think it was a conversation about vocal sounds, and he just said, he's one of the few people that said, I love the air around your voice. And it made me feel so sort of happy to think that someone actually liked that, wanted me for that quality, and wasn't kind of go, well, where's the voice and how many times are we going to have to layer up to get the sound, you know, whereas he wanted my sound, which was such a compliment.
Electric Friends, a Gary Numan podcast celebrating the tracks by a musical pioneer.
Hi, Thereza. Thanks so much for appearing on Electric Friends.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited. I'm excited to have a little chat, and I'm in the UK, so I'm even more excited as opposed to having these weird time differences being stuck. Yeah, it's great.
I bet. Well, you know, obviously, when it comes to 70s and 80s pop, which is a large part of this podcast, you know, you alongside David Van Day were one half of one of the UK's finest duos of all time. You know, Dollar was huge, was massive singles. You had some truly great songs, wrote your own music, and worked with some amazing people as well. So what are your first thoughts when you kind of first think back to, say, like 1978 and Dollar's breakthrough period? What was that when you think back at that?
Yeah, it's mind-blowing really for me, because part of it feels like it was sort of yesterday, and I can make this little leap, big leap, whatever, but I can just immediately go back to it, and I can remember, I can taste it, sense it, what it felt like. But the other part of me goes, is that really me? Did that really happen? Or was it just like a figment of my imagination? Because it's just, it was so, the times were so incredibly exciting, and having fallen in love with pop music literally by accident. I was sort of thrust into it when I wasn't even interested, and suddenly thought, how strange is life that this is actually my passion, this is my love. And then to be sort of like get sort of like involved. Dollar started in 78, and to be right at that turning point, creatively, you know, production wise, sophistication wise. I mean, you know, and there was this massive, and it wasn't like a change of gear in a car. It was more like it was like Concorde, you know, going through the sound barrier. It really was. It was like this thrust, and everything changed. You know, for me, it was almost like overnight. Of course, it wasn't, but suddenly all the sounds changed, and everything went faster, and it was glossier and clearer and cleaner and more technical and more complex. Fabulous, yeah.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know, then, like, how did you fall into music? Because you obviously got, you know, an amazing voice, and one of the greatest voices of that period as well. Yeah. How did that happen?
Completely freak accident. I wasn't interested in pop music. I was besotted by ballet, therefore the commercial side of classical music, as I call it, you know, Chopin, Tchaikovsky, Mozart, anything that was beautiful melodic structures. And then I realized sort of when I got to about 12, 13 that I wasn't going to cut it as a ballet dancer. I was pretty good technically. It wasn't the right body shape. And I thought, you know, what will I do? Oh, I'll sing and dance. And I was thinking more of musicals. Always watched Judy Garland when I was a kid. Excuse me. And kind of thought, well, I'll just do that. So I started off doing a couple of pantomimes, and then it went into this little touring show, which was boys and girls who sang and danced. And that show ended, and as in the great sort of ethos, you know, gotta get another job, any job, answer any advert. And of course, there's an advert in the stage newspaper. I sound like a dinosaur. And in the stage newspaper, there's an ad, girls and boys who can sing and dance. And I went, yep, that's me. And I go along for this audition. It's for a pop group. I had no idea. I sang my audition pieces. This is how clued in I was. Somewhere from West Side Story. And my speech was Puck from Shakespeare. I was just so straight, and I had long dark hair, and I wore a sort of below knee length A-line skirt and had a raincoat on. I mean, seriously, I looked like Julie Felix, but not. You know, it was just extraordinary. And I think they just thought, "Gosh, she's a child, putty in our hands."
And then obviously you and David were in Guys and Dolls, and then you decided to form Dollar and break through. Was that quite a scary decision at the time to do that?
It was devastating because we got chucked out. So it wasn't our decision to leave. Got chucked out, and I was heartbroken, devastated. They were my family. David really couldn't care less. He was just annoyed that he didn't get the chance to do it his way, and he got treated as more like an ego thing for him. I was so hurt. I couldn't work it out for months. Kept going, but gave everything, and I worked so hard. And I did challenge creative decisions by then, because by then I'd fallen in love with pop music, every bit of it. And I was listening to productions, and I was listening to song construction and all of that. And I was quite vocal, but only I thought in a constructive way. I said, if we don't move forward and choose better material and choose more modern production, we're going to become very set in our ways and everything. And I could feel the pace of things, but no one listened. And they just thought, she's trouble, and they threw me out with him.
Yeah. Well, 1979 though was such an exciting time for music. There's so much going on in the charts. You had disco, pop, punk, new wave, reggae, ska, and then obviously synth pop was breaking through, and spearheaded, of course, by Gary Numan as well.
Yeah.
And so both Dollar and Gary were arriving on the scene at the same time. So do you remember when you first heard about him and what he was doing at the time?
Yes, I did. Although I was trying to play catch up. I always feel probably a lot of my life I've been playing catch up, just because my sensibilities and music were, so, as I said, based on my upbringing, as most of us, that's who we've become. But I had quite a narrow sort of traditional upbringing and teenagehood. Well, I was 18 when I dropped into Guys and Dolls, but before that I was at a stage school, and it was, I was very naive, let's put it that way. And I didn't really, I wasn't a street kid. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand what was happening underground kind of movements, and let alone punk and ska. I was mesmerized, and I felt I was kind of very in my channel. But when I remember walking along the corridors of Top of the Pops once, and Gary was there, but he looked so serious and so in control of everything, and all these other artists, with his makeup, and you've got Susie and the Banshees, and you've got the post-punk artists, and you've got everything. And I kind of felt so vulnerable, because I felt so straight when everyone was doing their cool stuff and the rhythms were cool and everything. And there's me with my light, sort of airy voice and kind of my image, because I was literally just being me, being authentic, and kind of, I sort of thought, wow, am I a creative like them, or am I just this sort of cardboard cutout some of the time? Because I was, but I wasn't cool, and we weren't cool. The music became very cool, but we were never cool. We were appealing to people who also weren't cool, which is okay.
Yeah. Well, that was what was great about Dollar, is that, you could have gone down a certain route, but then you work with, like Trevor Horn and created some what is just really great pop music. And so it kind of separated you, I think, from other bands of similar ilk, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even now I'm sort of quite reflective on certain aspects of my career. And I've always believed in authenticity. I mean, probably my downfall, that I've never wanted to just, I'll just pretend to do that because it's much cooler, and everyone go, oh wow, she's really picked her game up and she's done it. But I've never done that, because I actually always think people will see through me, and that's much scarier than just being yourself and saying, well, this is me. If you don't like it, that's okay. Although I wanted everyone to like me back then. I think when you're young, you always want everyone to like you, don't you? Because it's sort of your vulnerability. Now I'm 68, I couldn't care less, really. It's just, this is me, and if you like it, great. And if you don't, well, that's okay. But it was just an amazing time. But my voice was, it was very different. Of course, you're coming out of the 70s, when the only women in the charts, they all were mostly leads. They were either, I think it was two categories, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was either the big lead singers with the big voices, even from Shirley Bassey or, Dusty and Petula Clark and Cilla Black and all of this sort of stuff. Or then you've got the other end of the spectrum with Peters and Lee, where you've got like the dressing on the stage, basically, with very little contribution. Hopefully that's not rude. But Dollar was a little bit different, because it was meant to be sharing the stage together, but it was always male vocals are the lead vocals and girls are the icing. We are the froth. And it was really, it was the mistake with Love's Got a Hold of Me that changed that with the first album with Chris Neal, because it was meant to be, I wrote that, but it was meant to be David's vocal, because of course that's the formula. David sings the lead, and I do all the block ups, which is the air and the wall of sound, sort of like the Carpenters at the back. And he couldn't sing it. He just didn't. And Chris Neal looked at me in the studio and went, "Didn't you write this?" I went, "Mm-hmm." And he said, "It's in David's key." I went, "Mm-hmm." It was very, very quiet. And he said, "It's not working, is it?" I went, "No." And he said, "You go and have a go." And I just looked at him and I went, No. I said, "Not my key. That's not the plan."
Yeah.
Go on, have a go. He's so charming. Chris Neal, what a gorgeous guy. So talented. And I did. And I was actually shaking. I was terrified because I like to be prepared. And I was standing there and I was going to be so high. I'm kind of like, I've got a high voice, but this was high. It was not even starting at mid-range and going high. It was so high. And I did the first bit and I just saw this sort of thumbs up through the mirror with a big grin. And I went, "Really?" He goes, "Really, really." And I go, "Well, shall I take it from the top?" They said, "Do whatever you like." And that's what we did.
It's the way it should be. Yeah.
But I was it's probably one of the most terrifying moments of my life.
Yeah. Well, in that way, then I guess I suppose Kate Bush came around at the same sort of time as well. Is that there was that helped spearhead the 80s side, people like Kim Wilde being able to come through and be front and center for this kind of music as well. So that must feel good that you were part of that.
What people had different. I mean, Toyah. Everyone had different kinds of voices. It wasn't just the blockbuster traditional lead vocalist singer, female lead vocalist. It wasn't like that. And that did give me some confidence. But I always felt, I just always felt defensive because my voice is tiny. It's kind of like if you sort of, I've always tried to sort of put it into, I like make sort of painting visual pictures. So did Trevor. We used to have incredible conversations about with very strange images, but it worked for us. But my voice, if you could, I feel like I'm a gymnast on a balance beam because my voice is a pure signal, but it's a pointy, very narrow width and with a whole load of air around it, and it's very different to someone who's got a lovely, meaty, big, rounded sort of voice. I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's much harder to deal with. And my voice is only suitable for certain kinds of vocal structures. That's just how it is.
Well, one song where that did work perfectly was in 1982 when you teamed up with Gary. So tell us how that first came about, and how did you get to know him? How did that happen?
I'm trying to remember. It's a long time ago. And there's so much going on, but I'm pretty sure his management, which is his dad, wasn't it? Got in touch with we were on WEA by then, and I think that's how it happened. But I remember getting a phone call saying Gary Numan wants you to go and sort of like do a bit on his record, and I just sort of went, really? And I still remembered what that feeling was when we were in Top of the Pops, because it was just. I was so humbled, like in his presence, thinking, "Oh my gosh!" And he's young, but look what he's achieved, and he's unique. And so ended up having a conversation, and then he explained, and I think it was a conversation about vocal sounds, and he just said he's one of the few people that said, "I love the air around your voice," and it made me feel so. Sort of happy to think that someone actually liked that, wanted me for that quality and wasn't kind of go, "Well, where's the voice and how many times are we going to have to layer up to get the sound?" Whereas he wanted my sound, which was such a compliment.
And so the song "Noise Noise," what do you remember about recording that track? Did you say was he in the studio with you at the time
Yeah,
then when
yeah,
that was
yeah,
happening?
yeah. He was with me, but we just it was just so easy because of course his ear is so good that he knew exactly what he wanted to hear, and he just said, "Well, this is it's your sound, and I just want you to create your sound over this bit." And I went, "Right, wind me up. Where's the mic?" And off we go. Which was because he knew what he wanted, and that's a comfort, because as I said, if I'd gone in and said, "But I want you to do this," and I would have gone, "I can't really do that. You're going to be disappointed." So it was a lovely interaction. It was, and it was a breeze. And it sounded so good. It sounds like, I feel like it's only a small element, obviously, but I feel like it did enhance.
Oh yeah,
the record. Yeah.
Absolutely, and a lot of people have said that that song should have been like the A side at the time, and if anything, it did inspire him to start using female backing singers a lot more in his music. So I don't think he'd done that much at that point, if at all.
It was interesting, Noise, yeah, because even I went, gosh, it was such an interesting sound that he was creating. And it's kind of, I love being in the studio. I mean, I kind of was, one of the boys, always. It was my favorite place. Just used to hang out and kind of listen to things and just, it was like a playground for me, just watching what people did and a bit of experimentation here and there. So good.
And obviously he's obviously changed over the years and he's still going strong as well. But what was he like as a person back then? He came across as a bit shy and whatever, but I'm sure in the studio, as you say, he was exactly what you wanted. And
it's interesting, isn't it, that people have such different sort of like personalities and ways of doing things, but he very quiet, like a quiet way of approaching things, quite intense, but in a non-threatening way, just intense, but all about the music and the sound, but just in a very quiet, considered kind of way, which I like that. I don't like dramas and all that stuff. Just doesn't do much for me. And a bit like Trevor Horn, the same kind of thing, considered, kind of charming in a very understated way, that kind of thing. And it's a nice way to work. As I said, it doesn't always have to be high energy and sort of like frenetic and stuff. It's almost like, it sounds like sort of like balloons that kind of popping off everywhere, whereas I kind of like things that are much more stable. So Gary was very stable, but very understated.
And did you have you seen him in recent years? Have you ever caught up since then? Or
I haven't, but I've been since I've been involved in social media, which I have to say I shied away from so many years. And it was only January the 1st I went, that's it. This is my resolution, just because I'm writing a book, and my literary publisher, who's a fabulous chap in London, he goes, "We've got some really strong interest here, but it's gone to acquisition, and they just say your social media is just not." And I blinked at him and I said, "That's important, right?" And he just laughed at me. Yep. And I went, "Okay, so you're not asking me, but you're sowing the seed that if I want." And he said, "Mm-hmm." And I went, "Okay, so you got to give people what the tools they need to work with." So I started this year. So I've been watching, and Gary's daughter, what's her name?
Raven.
Raven, isn't it? Just what a beauty. But you can must be this incredible talent that's just she's inherited. And I've heard a couple of snippets of things, just phenomenal. So I mean, that's also lovely to see, isn't it? When you've got sons or daughters who are such an artist carrying on the tradition, it must give him such pleasure.
Well, let's say the year before Noise came out, then Dollar returned with, I'd argue some of your best tracks like Mirror Mirror, and there's a bit of Gary-esque synth pop to it as well. So what was it like you talked about Trevor Horn a bit, but what was it like to be in the room with him, who was at the top of his game at the time as well?
Well, was he at the top? He had no game. He had no game. He was not interested. He was quite ambivalent, I would say. Yeah, but he agreed. I mean, I can be quite persuasive, and kind of if I know something, musically, I know it. I mean, I kind of, that's something, and I will fight fiercely for what I think is something that is worth fighting for. And so we met up in a little Japanese restaurant in Soho, in London, and he wasn't interested at all. He was just being polite because Trevor's so polite. And it's only when we were sort of like filling in conversation, basically, kind of go, well, what have you guys got, planned for the rest of the year? And I sort of said, oh, I think it might be the end of this year. We're going to Tokyo for the Yamaha Music Festival. And bang, his eyes lit up behind his glass. He went, Tokyo. I said, mm-hmm. He went, Japan. I said, yeah. He said, oh. Because I mean, in those days, and when we're sitting in Japanese, it was just, he just had this little, was intrigued. So spoke a bit more about that. And he just said, look, I'm going for a writing session tonight with Bruce Woolley. And if anything comes up, I'll call you. And I went away so dejected. I thought, well, I did my best and I don't think that's going to happen. And what are we going to do? And blow me down. The next morning, he called me. He said, I had a pretty good session last night with Bruce. He said, so much so that we put down this demo and thought, and Trevor, thought you and David just might like to pop over and put some vocals on it in this very casual. And I'm kind of like wanting to leap down the phone and hug him. I said, oh, I think that would be all right. My best, trying to take his lead and just don't be sort of like gushing, just calm down a bit. And we went to the demo studio that night. And that was handheld in black and white. That was the demo. And he actually uses some of those parts actually on the mark.
Wow.
And they wrote Mirror, Mirror, same session. I mean,
yeah,
unbelievable, isn't it? But that was just something. And then that's how it all started from just from there. And then he realized, I think also that there's so many different dimensions to pop music. And I think even he was just, you think someone's got it all, everything in a row. He didn't. Neither did Christy. I used to think they're so old and so in control. They're not really. They're just big creators and kind of right foot, left foot, see where it takes you. But it was stunning sort of meeting of his ideas and the musicians that he used and his creativity. I mean, handheld or black or white, you might be interested. He even explains in his book, he got the drummer, because we're still using live musicians, and he's got the drummer to play just with one stick. Just try and get a little bit more urgent, but in a kind of a different, anything to just, it's so subtle, but all these subtleties that you actually weave together create something different. And Trevor was all about different, but not clumsy different, something that just catches the ear, whatever that might be. And then we started playing with my voice and fell in love with the Fairlight, fell in love with the machine, that was it. Fairlight loved me back. So that was quite something, really.
Amazing. And now, obviously, you're back in the UK for a tour, which is very exciting. So to tell us how that came about and what fans can expect from these shows.
Oh, well, so all comes back to the book, really. Well, it's COVID, really, silver linings to the book I need to have a bit more exposure. And part of the book towards the end is a memoir, and it's like lots of fun about the 80s and what happened and all those the ups and the downs. And I sort of like I've got to have an ending. I like endings, I like to know how the structure is. And I sort of thought, well, it's sort of then about me, isn't it? And aging and how people manage and ageism and how we say all to ourselves, I don't think you should do that because I don't think you'd miss the boat with that, and I think you're a bit old to be doing that. And I'm thinking, what rubbish. And I thought, well, if I really want to do something, what would I do? I said, I'd like to go and do a tour, meet some fans, reacquaint myself with friends, make new friends, explore music. And so working with a live band is going to be a big treat for me. I never got to really do that.
And you've reunited with David a few times over the years, but now there's a new partnership as well on this tour. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
So that is Water Under the Bridge. So it's Thereza Bazar's Dollar, being very explicit. It's doing it my way. We're doing some different treatments, not touching the iconic moments because that would be disappointing, but some of the album tracks, we actually have working some different harmonies and approaching things differently. So it's quite it's a musical nostalgic journey with a lot of sparkly pop bits in between. I think that's probably a nice way of putting it. And Stephen Fox, he partnered me in 2019 when I just did a one-woman show just to sort of dip my toes in. And he's phenomenal. He's got a phenomenal voice. It's a massive voice. He's going, you have to tone it down a bit. I said, only in places. Got a really good sound engineer, and I'm going to have so much gain on my mic that it doesn't matter. I said, you go for your life, darling, because I will be right up there in the heavens with this kind of the glassy quality. You know, it's all about, I love sound, as you can possibly tell. I love it. You know, it's just a case of that you've got to get it right. You've got to get it right. So the band, I think, are a bit fearful because we've been doing a couple of things over Zoom. They were all going to meet up over the weekend at the beginning, and they're kind of going, oh my gosh. I'm going, no, I'll be lovely. But only if you're paying attention, you know, don't change the riffs, don't change the syncopation, don't change anything that's integral. Yeah. And I'm fierce about that. And I think Gary would be, or anyone would be, you know, because there are certain things that the backbone of a record. It's not the tinsel bits on the top. It's the foundation, and it's so important. Yeah.
And fans will know. Fans will know.
We could talk music all morning, you and me. I think we really could.
I'm more than happy to. But yeah, look, it's going to be a must see, I think, for any fans of pop anyway, but generally, definitely from the 80s. And I'm sure it's going to be a great show. And I really look forward to the book as well. Sounds like that's going to be a great read.
I think, you know, what you said is right. It's not going to be just Thereza and Stephen dancing about on stage, you know, it's going to be so much meatier and more substantial than that. It's going to be a proper musical journey. And also, for me, it's a nod to production values and how things changed, and songwriters and music producers. And that's kind of what I'm going to be chatting about a little bit, you know, all the way through, because it's teamwork. Of course it is. I mean, the artists are just the icing on the cake. It's all the other elements that go into make great music. Of course it is. And I don't think they ever get their rightful place in history. I mean, the Trevors, yes, but, you know, maybe the one notch down, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not enough. And that, for me, they are the absolute fundamental sort of essence of pop, really, the producers and the musicians and the writers. Yeah.
Well, as I say, it's been brilliant speaking to you, Thereza. Thanks so much for your time today on Electric Friends, and massive good luck with the tour.
Thank you ever so much, my darling. Thanks for having me on. Can't wait to hear it.
Electric Friends, a Gary Numan podcast, celebrating the tracks by a musical pioneer.